fellow Trek Chatters, I'm Pit Trekkie, and welcome to another episode of Pittsburgh's Trek Chat. So for today's episode, what I'm going to be doing is reviewing Episode 8 of Season 2 of Star Trek Picard, Mercy. So just like with a lot of the episodes this season, there have been a lot of little story arcs going on that are kind of forming into the greater whole, trying to piece everything together. So for the most part, you've got the Picard, Guinan, Agent Wells story with a little bit of Q mixed in. Then you have the story with 7 and 9 and Raffi trying to find Jurati / the Borg Queen. And you get a little sprinkle of Elnor in that little arc this time around. Then you have Rios and his story aboard the La Sirena and with Dr. Ramirez and her son. And then, of course, we have the continuing storyline with Adam Sung, his daughter, Tori, and a little bit of the Jurati Borg Queen kind of being mixed into this one. So let's go ahead and get started into review of the episode. So basically we'll start with Picard's storyline. So as we know, at the end of the last episode, both Picard and Guinan were arrested by Agent Wells and the FBI because he suspected that they're extraterrestrials. Alright? I'm going to pause that for a second. This episode begins with a flashback. So we see a little boy running in the woods, running away from something. Slides on the ground and falls, and when he looks up, there are two people that appear to be Vulcans standing over him and looking down at him. So then it goes into the 2024 present of the episode. So Agent Wells has taken Picard and Guinan and put them in some sort of basement in FBI headquarters, kind of like right out of the X-Files, basically. And it was all in ruins, things weren't working, it was a mess. And so basically he accuses them of being extraterrestrials and that he believes that their mission there is to sabotage the Europa mission. And part of why he says this is because he actually he has a contact who was actually able to send him pictures from the Europa Gala, and he said that there were 6 trespassers, and it happened to be all 6 of the main cast of characters. So this gentleman, Agent Wells, basically says that he's reported this, and that there's going to be a lot of trouble for them, basically, if they don't go and admit to him who they actually are. Guinan's a little suspicious. She notices that he's got his big mug of coffee, he looks disheveled with his wrinkled clothes, and that he seems like this is more of a personal mission for him rather than being like this being an official interrogation. At one point, he has Guinan be moved out of the room. He says to Picard, he notices the IV bruise that he had from a couple episodes back. He said that Picard admitted that he's just basically human, and he said, well, if you're an extraterrestrial, you wouldn't have had any papers, so you wouldn't have been able to go to a hospital, so he assumed he'd had to have gone to a free clinic. And he also said it was the same clinic that this guy went to recently, which happened to be Rios. He also had a sworn affidavit basically saying, word for word, the speech that Rios gave to the ice worker when he was in the cage about how he is captain of the Stargazer and they're trying to stop this cybernetic organism from destroying humanity. He also said that... I'm sorry, one moment. Alright, my apologies for that. Work is never ending. All right. So anyway, he finds out that Agent Wells had the clinic where Rios was at raided, and they found Rios's communicator from that time, and he basically accused Picard of wanting to wipe out all of humanity. Going forward to Guinan, so Guinan is another area of the FBI headquarters, and Q, disguised as a FBI agent, comes in. He's surprised to see her because they have that bad history that we knew of in The Next Generation. But she doesn't recognize him because in that time they haven't met yet. She notices that there's a feeling of emptiness and fear with him, and she realizes that Q is dying. Q actually admits this to her and said that he was kind of actually looking forward to it. After living a life as an immortal, what would that next journey basically be like? But he said that it's been very, very basically disappointing to him because he feels like instead of being this warm embrace and things are going to be going very well for him, it sounds like things are just getting worse and worse and worse for him, including losing his powers. At one point he was even snapping his fingers to try to vaporize her out of existence, which obviously didn't work. She asks Q why he's playing these games with Picard. And he said that it was Picard who trapped himself in the past, and that right now it's about the escape. That kind of leads to finishing out a little bit more of Picard's storyline. So Guinan is able to actually project herself into Picard's mind and says something about humanity being in the past, or that humans tend to be trapped in their past, which is something Q actually said to Guinan right before he walked out of that FBI room on her. And Picard gets what she's trying to say because he can see she's looking toward Wells. So Picard changes tactics with Agent Wells and says, why is this so personal for you? You tell me your story, I'll tell you mine. So Wells talks about a night when he was a little boy, which from the beginning of the episode, he was walking in the woods, he was looking for his dog Maggie, when he accidentally comes across two extraterrestrials at a lake or pond. There's just some technology there. He starts to run from them, and these two start going after him. Well, he slips and he falls, and the two Vulcans appear, and one of them goes and approaches him with the mime to do a mind meld, what obviously was. But Wells, obviously not knowing what it was, thought he was being attacked, and he tells Picard he felt like his fingers were going through his skull into his brain, basically. And while that was happening, all of a sudden, the Vulcans transported away. So it was that transport that really surprised him when he saw the video of Picard being transported earlier on. That was something he wasn't expecting, and he figured that meant that the extraterrestrials had returned. So he figures that they basically were monsters who wanted to take out Earth. And Picard explains, no, those were Vulcans, and they were doing a mind meld to try to get him to not remember the experience, but that it failed. And then Picard goes and tells him about his story. It turns out that Wells leaves the room, but then he comes back when Guinan is reunited with him with a box of his stuff, and basically he's being let go. I guess because of his aliens, conspiracy theories, things of that nature. And so basically that's where Picard's storyline ends. He lets Picard and Guinan go, and that's kind of it with Wells. Moving on to 7 and 9 stories. So 7 and 9 and Raffi are continuing to look around for Dr. Jurati / the Borg Queen. So they go back to that bar, I think it was called Duncan's, that Jurati had smashed a window out of a day or so earlier. They talk to the owner, and the owner says that Jurati left with a man with a red beard. Now, 7 and 9 and Raffi are having a discussion about the dangers of the Borg Queen in the 21st century, and Raffi's trying to say, hey 7, you were a Borg before, put yourself in the Queen's place. And 7 and 9 seems to take a lot of offense to this, saying, I'm not Borg, I'm not able to think about her the way that I had. As that story progressed on, they did find the man that Jurati left with. They found out that he was dead. He was laying in the street by a dumpster with his throat slashed. 7 and 9 deduces that the Borg Queen was trying to create some sort of connection, kind of like the Collective, even if it was on a small scale, and that when she wasn't satisfied with that, she ended up killing the man. So what they're also noticing, they found his cell phone on the ground, and they also noticed right around that moment that they heard a bunch of... Actually, step back here. What happened was that the battery was gone, and Raffi finds out that there was lithium ion in it, which is a stabilizing metal. 7 and 9 realizes what the Borg Queen is up to, is that she's trying to create new nanoprobes because they need stabilizing metals, which she got put into her body when she was 6 years old when she was assimilated. She says she can still taste it in her body. And so they end up finding Jurati. It turns out that she / the Borg Queen have been ripping through cars, taking the batteries, and drinking the battery acid to help with creating these primitive type of nanoprobes. Jurati, obviously, / the Queen, attacks Raffi, picks her up by her neck, but at the last second, it seems as though Jurati comes through, lets her go, and then Jurati / the Queen walk away from the situation. A little bit later, they're talking a little bit more about it. They realize that the Borg Queen and the Borg themselves have no compassion, so it must be Jurati somehow trying to break through. So she must not be completely assimilated yet. So they realize that they're able to track her by using the cell phone. They find the search history, and they find out that she is supposed to be going to Song's house. Okay, this then leads us to Song's story. So Corey, it starts with Corey, where she is still going through the video journal logs of her father, Dr. Sung, trying to figure out who or what she is. She's really not able to figure out the story, so she puts on these like Oculus type of VR goggles, which they called in this episode aspectus, I think is the word that it was. And so she goes virtually into her father's laboratory, and she sees a vial, and it has her name on it. With like, it looks like fluid inside. Well, somehow Q kind of recorded himself and inserted himself into the VR program. And he basically tells Corey that she was just an experiment, that they weren't related, and that basically she needs to have her freedom. So he actually sends her a box that has a vial of the serum in it, the cure. It says freedom on the tag. All right. So when Sung comes back and he wants to talk to Corey about his behaviors the previous night, she's actually very upset with him. She basically wants to know what she is and how many of herself there were. So Sung kind of talks about there were the first dozen only lasted a number of days, and then there was one that actually lived to about age 4, and that Corey herself was not actually expected to live beyond the age of 6. And then but she had continued to thrive and grow. She feels that he doesn't love her, that he only loves his work. And he did admit that he loves his work, but he loves her as well. And basically they get into an argument about, you know, what her reality really is, and he's like, reality is a construct, those kind of things. And again, he says that even though he loves his work, he loves her. Well, she ends up going outside. She's like, what's going to happen to you if, you know, I step outside? She steps outside. He tries to stop her, but he realizes she's doing okay. And what she does is she holds up the little empty blue vial that Q had given her, and it has the tag freedom on it. And she talks about how, I wonder if it's you who needs me rather than me needing you at this point. And he tries to go after her, but she said she'll call the police. And then she completely walks away from him. A little bit later in the episode, we see Sung is sitting there and he is drinking, and Jurati / the Boar Queen comes into the house. She needs his assistance, surprisingly. And basically there is an obstacle to the goals that they both want. She said that Sung is at a fork road in time. So there are two basic futures that he could have. The future that the Boar Queen came from was where he was basically hailed as the savior of all of humanity. And it all ties back to the Europa mission with Renee. So we already know that Renee goes on this ship to Io, finds some sort of molecule or something that saves people, and it's brought back to Earth. Well, if Renee doesn't go on this mission, Earth is going to go into some sort of climactic free fall, and humanity is going to be devastated. And Sung comes up with a discovery that saves all of humanity, which then leads toward the Confederation timeline. But if Renee brings back this molecule or this virus or whatever it is on Io, then it'll lead toward the future that we all know of. And the Queen says that it's Picard who's actually in kind of stopping it for both of them. So she wants Sung's help in stopping the mission and eliminating Renee. Stepping forward a little bit, when Seven and Raffi make contact with Picard, they all deduce that because there's a transporter lock on the La Sirena, which Rios has basically been trying to take care of the whole episode, in between having a little mini romance situation with Dr. Ramirez. That's basically his story. They realize that the Queen wants the La Sirena, and that the plan is that she's going to start assimilating other cultures 400 years before her time, so that they need to stop her. So what Sung and the Jurati / Queen do, Sung said that he was able to get soldiers to kind of help her out, because she can't go into all these places alone, and neither can Sung. So he gets on the phone with some sort of colonel from Spearhead Operations, which was that program where he was doing genetic experiments on soldiers. Contingent of officers, some of the best physically, mentally, came down, and one of the guys says, "What do you need with us?" Well, the Queen goes over and basically puts her hand on one of the guys and assimilates him. Says, "Don't worry, this won't sting much." And that's basically where the episode ends, even with Song kind of shocked. So it was a very filled episode, a lot going on in episode 8. So some of the things that I really liked about the episode, I really liked the X-Files vibe down at the bottom, with the beat-up cabinets and the broken video equipment and the camera at the top not working. Somebody even on the internet said that they should have done an X-Files crossover where it was actually Mulder. Honestly, I'm glad they didn't do that, but I thought it was a neat little vibe. Because you would think that's kind of where a lot of ET extraterrestrial stuff would kind of look at in an interrogation. I also really enjoy the continuing exploration of 7 and 9 with her feelings being defective. All right, so we know that Raffi's trying to encourage 7 and 9 to use her experience as a Borg to actually help her kind of track where she thinks the Borg Queen would be going or what she would be doing. Well, it actually makes 7 and 9 very, very angry throughout the episode because it feeds back to the beginning of the season where she keeps feeling that she's defective. Remember that all the XBs are pretty much feared in the Alpha Quadrant at this point in their time. So she constantly feels defective. She doesn't feel that she has the humanity like everybody else has. So for Jurati to keep saying that, it was a reminder of her that she was different. And we know that 7 and 9 has really been enjoying being free of those Borg things all over. I'm blanking on the word here for the moment. The implants. And it makes her feel different. So that's kind of a reminder to her when Raffi keeps saying that she really is different, even though right now nobody can see that. But it was interesting about how 7 and 9 told Raffi about how she manipulates people. And Raffi, surprisingly, didn't get defensive. She actually admitted it. Raffi talked about how Eleanor told her right before all this, everything went to hell at the beginning of the season. He was supposed to go to Starfleet Academy. He wanted to be a security officer, but the Kuat Malat had contacted him, said they needed him back on Vashti. He said he would only be gone for a year and he could delay his studies, but Raffi said she didn't really want him to do that, and basically he was leaving her. She said that it was up to him, but she laid a guilt trip on him, and then he decided to go for Starfleet, and then that's what ended up with him dying in the episode. So it was nice to see a little bit more of that humanity from Raffi this time around. Instead of her putting her guard up, her actually saying, yeah, you know what, I messed up in this situation and it caused a problem here. I don't know where that's going to lead the rest of the season. We'll see. We only have 2 episodes left. Or maybe that's just a thread just to explain why she was so attached to Eleanor. Let's see. It's also interesting. We learned that the Q can actually kill each other. Guinan actually made this comment. But how? Because we always have assumed, based on the past in Star Trek, that Q was actually, the whole Q continuum was omnipotent, that they didn't die unless they were changed. We know in 3rd season episode Deja Q that Q was made a human, so he could have easily been killed at that point when the Calamarain had attacked. We also know from the 2nd season episode of Voyager, Death Wish, that Quinn was changed to human, and that's when he had committed suicide. So we've never seen a Q actually kill a Q before. So how does that happen? And what is the reason why Q is dying right now? Is this some sort of punishment from the continuum? Did he do something? Again, hopefully we're going to find that out very, very soon. Some of the things that I disliked about this episode, and there were a couple things. One, I did not like this whole thing with Corey having just immediate access to Dr. Song's laboratory through the virtual reality and just being able to just randomly be able to go on his computers. You're going to tell me for the very first time that she actually decided, oh, I was never going to go on his computers before, but now I'm going to be able to, and Dr. Song had no problems with that whatsoever? I just think that's just really sloppy writing. I would have thought they would at least put in a spot where she had to fight her way into that lab. This is what you usually see in the movies when there's these secret labs. They have to fight their way into it. It was just like a free open for her. She could just do whatever she wanted. I'm surprised it took this long for her to figure out who she was and what Dr. Sung was. You know, it just doesn't make any sense to me. The other thing that kind of was weird to me was about Jurati drinking the battery acid. So, yes, they talked about the stabilizing with the lithium ion of the metals, those kind of things. But It kind of made me think back to Star Trek First Contact when they were talking about destroying the Borg and using, they were going to the coolant tanks and engineering on the Enterprise E. And Data saying that, or Picard saying that the Borg need their organic components along with their cybernetic components. Well, wouldn't this battery acid that she was drinking, wouldn't that have poisoned Jurati or burned her face or done something? Or, you know, or is it at this point, is it that the Queen is pretty much well into Jurati's body that she was able to protect the body from those things happening? I don't know. It just seemed a little bit weird, and it kind of feels like they're just kind of making stuff up as they go with this whole nanoprobe kind of stuff. So those were really the only dislikes I had about the episode, but I have some questions. So what was the purpose of Soong creating these dozens of clones? Was it simply because he'd been working on genetics and he was trying to, you know, through eugenics, trying to recreate humanity? So it's not exactly clear yet what his goal in all of this was. Why is Q dying? We just talked about that. Is it an illness? Is he being killed by another Q? Is he being punished for something? We don't know yet. So hopefully that'll be tied up nicely and not quickly like in a split-second comment, like some Star Trek storylines kind of are. What were the Vulcans doing on Earth? So, I mean, obviously, First Contact officially with the Vulcans was on April 5th, 2063 from First Contact, but we also know that they crash-landed in Carbon Creek, PA from the second season episode of Enterprise, Carbon Creek. What were these Vulcans doing there? Back in First Contact, the Vulcans were passing up Earth because they had no interest in Earth. It was too primitive. Remember Counselor Troy saying that? So what were they doing in the year 2024 near a pond of water in the woods? So what is Corey? We know that she's certainly not, she's some sort of genetic experiment, but is she Dr. Soong's child to some degree? Some sort of clone of somebody else? You know, what is she and what was she made for? Why is Q helping Corey? He was trying to help Dr. Soong, and now he's helping Corey. So try to figure out what's going on in that regard. How did Wells get an exact transcript for what Rios was saying to the Ice Guard? Because that was just some random discussion that kind of happened in a cage. You know, it didn't sound like it was being recorded. They didn't show anything at all. Maybe the camera's above. Maybe that's where they got it from. That could be an assumption. And the last question, what did Q mean when talking about is the escape that matters? So we keep getting all these little cryptic remarks from Q ever since the beginning of the season about what's going on with Picard, why the timeline was changed, the trial never ends. So this is just another one to add to that. What does he mean about the escape? And if they do escape and they return back to their own time and fixed time, what's going to be the end result of that? So those are basically, that's my review of the episode. Overall, I thought it was pretty good. It was pretty entertaining. Again, you've got all these multiple stories going on, but again, it seems like they're needed to actually kind of form the whole season arc as a whole. If you have any comments that you would like to put down, please feel free to put them in the comments section. You can follow the show here on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com, put Pittsburgh's Trek Chat in the search engine. It'll take you directly to my channel. You can also follow the show on Facebook, facebook.com/Pittsburgh's Trek Chat. You can also follow the show on Twitter at PGH Trek Chat. I'm looking forward to the next episode. Until then, may yins live long and prosper.